Hi, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life. And today I've got the wonderful Joe Hoye, founder of Hoye Fit. Now, Joe, thanks for joining me today. I want to kick off by just asking you to introduce yourself, but also tell us a little bit why a 30-something-year-old man is working in this middle-aged women's weight loss space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the longer part of the story for sure. But my name's Joe, 31 years old, born and raised in Vermont. And so, if most of your listeners are near you, that's the east side of the US. Cold and snowy here right now. And a little bit about me, I absolutely hate that. So, I'm trying to escape that as soon as I can. I like the outdoors, preferably by an ocean with a nice breeze and some palm trees. And that's me. Like anything outdoors is what I love. But I think my next passion is just going to be just unlocking people and helping them become the best version of themselves. And it's been quite an evolution in terms of what I do, right? And so, as you said, I've spent most of my coaching career helping women 40, 50, 60 plus unlock themselves mentally and physically and really make sure that the second half of their life is the best half. And in the beginning, I had all the pitchforks, the torches, everybody was after me. It's like, who is this guy that's so young in this menopause space? Clearly, he's just here to make a dollar. And that changed quickly when I finally became bold enough to share my story. And people realized there's a little bit more depth to this. And so I'll share it today. It's kind of a three-part story. It starts back when I was 13 years old. Growing up at my house, my mom was my strongest, most consistent role model. I had two stepbrothers. Sometimes they were at the house, sometimes they're at their mom's. And so most of the time, it was just me and my mom, or me and my mom and her friends. And that's how I learned to communicate and kind of navigate the world. But at 13, she saw I was going down two bad paths. Number one, I shot up in height, but I never really got bigger. And so I was really skinny, really awkward and uncoordinated, not smart at school, not good at sports, not really good at much. And I got picked on for it a lot, endlessly. And at the same time, I was starting to hang out with the wrong kids, make the wrong choices that were going to drastically affect the trajectory of my life. And my mom saw both of those. She was already in the gym. And she's like, Joe, I'm going to the gym tonight, just like every night during the week. I'd love it if you came with me, though, tonight. Do you want to do that? And with me getting picked on and me being unhappy mentally, the answer is obvious because all the guys at the gym had muscles, they had confidence, they weren't getting picked on. And so I was like, yeah, of course I'd like to go. And from day one, I fell in love with it. But from 13 to 18, I went religiously and I never really changed the shape of my body. Maybe I gained 5 to 10 pounds throughout that 5 year span, but I was still awkward, skinny, not very good at much, and still getting picked on. But what it did do is it saved me mentally and it redirected my life from making those poor choices to where I am today. And so, number one, if my mom hadn't stepped in, you and me wouldn't be talking. I wouldn't have affected any lives in this way. And so I so dearly just want to give back to her and thank her. And this is my way of doing that. But number two, after high school, I go to college. I start pursuing a career in the medical field, in surgery specifically. And I'm taking these courses on anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, nutrition, all the things that create change in the body and help me understand how the body works. And so, me being me, I still want to gain muscle and now I know how. So I start applying these things to myself, but at the same time, I'm 18 and I'm away from home. And so you know what comes next as I start drinking and partying. And so that combination of a massive calorie surplus and then an even bigger one with alcohol and poor sleep leads to weight gain. Some of it being muscle because yes, I'm training at the gym, most of it being fat. And in the span of a year, I gain 80 pounds. So I go from 5'11", 145 pounds up to 225. And now
Wow.
I have a new problem.
Mhm.
I'm still uncomfortable in my skin. I still don't really like myself. I'm just not skinny anymore. Now I'm fat. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I'm sick of this. I need to make a change. I cut the partying, I dial in nutrition, dial in exercise, dial in recovery, and I finally reached what I wanted. So around the age of 22 is when I reach my goal physique. And I come home after college, back home where everybody knows me, and people are shocked. They're like, oh my God, Joe, how did you do this? Because we knew you underweight, we knew you overweight. And now, no, we don't recognize you physically, but more importantly, we don't recognize who you actually are. because you're more confident, you're funny, you're speaking your mind, and we like this, Joe. How did you do it? And I had so many people ask me to where I had this light bulb moment where it's like, wow, I might have something here. I think I can help other people. And transparently, I thought I wanted to help people like me. Young men lose fat or gain muscle and feel confident in their mind and body. And so I start running and advertising these 8-week fat loss challenges on Facebook and Instagram, just to my local friends and community. I get a ton of signups and I never look at the name. So I open up Zoom on that very first day and I get ready to have my first coaching call with all the signups. And I look at the faces looking back at me, ready for guidance from Joe. And I panic because nobody looks like me.
Mm.
Every single person looks like you, Nikki. And I was like, uh-oh, now what? What did I do to get these ladies and what am I going to do now? But I realized that I think I attracted them because going back to part one of my story, I grew up with my mom and her friends. Like I learned to communicate in a way that resonates with them. And so I naturally drew them in. At the end of the first call, everyone's laughing and having fun, including me. At the end of the first 8 weeks rather, everybody gets great results. And I sat back and I reflected on it. And I was like, I don't really care if this is not what I wanted. This is what I like. This is fun. And so for the next probably 5 years of my coaching career, I've only focused on women in midlife and beyond. Um, at that time, I get my job in surgery because the coaching was not profitable. I was actually losing money on the first few challenges. And so I got to do something to pay the bills. So I'm working in surgery. My job was a surgical technologist, right? I was never a doctor, never a surgeon. Don't put me on that pedestal. Um, and so in my role in the OR, there was myself and 7 other girls. And my higher ups, again, thought it would be a good idea to take the one male and stick him inside the OB and GYN based rooms. And
Mm.
so, again, here's fate or the universe or God pushing me in this direction, saying, you need to spend time here. And so I did. I learned to understand the female body from doctors and surgeons that spent their entire adult career understanding it. And I would take that knowledge and bring it home outside of surgery and apply it to my clients I was working with. And so it gave me a massive advantage to many other coaches in the space, especially early on when this menopause conversation wasn't as prevalent.
Mm.
And I just kind of formed my own path this way. And that's my story. So number one, I want to give back to my mom. Number two, if I do want to change a guy's life like mine, I think the best way to do it is to change his mom's life because it's going to trickle down. Number
Definitely.
three, I like doing it. And number four, I'm pretty damn good at it. That's it.
Pretty good reasons, I'd say. Yeah, and I like the fact that you just completely bucked the trend of, people your age doing it for people their age, and you're thinking beyond that. And I know I see it was a bit of an accident where you started, but from since then you've really galvanized it and really affecting that generation of women who we are very influential on families and communities, and that way you get a bigger reach, I think. So let's kick off with your approach. Tell me a little bit about the myth that we as middle-aged women grew up with, the whole dieting thing, because I'm included in this from the age of around, actually from the age of 7. My mum put me into Weight Watchers for kids. Back then, it was just normal to do that. So from the age of 7 onwards, I was very aware of the scales, my weight, and it's just been a constant in my life. So diets are a friend and foe of mine, and I'm sure many other women listening. So tell us a little bit about why diets don't work at the end of the day, and then you also say something that is very intriguing as well, that why nearly any diet could have worked. And to explain that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of your listeners are going to think we planned this because what I was about to say is that so many women that I've worked with have been on Weight Watchers since they were 10 or 15 because their mom put them on it, meaning well, right? They didn't mean harm, they meant the
Oh
best,
yeah,
but they didn't know. And so now at that young age, all you know about nutrition is that you need to eat small amounts, everything comes in points, and that is your foundational understanding of food and how it fits with your body and life. And
and
so,
and,
how do you
and
think?
also how calories are enemy. The calorie is an enemy, and that's how I felt about calories all my life. So again, that's instilled at a very young age.
You nailed it. And my God, that's so detrimental. and I'm sure we'll get into my whole diet detox talk later, but I think it's helpful to just plug this real quick. Yeah, I want to help people rebuild their bodies physically, but I want to help people rebuild their minds mentally. And just like you, Nikki, learn that calories are our best friend. We need more of them as a general rule of thumb for this demographic to thrive, right? And so that's my foundational belief. But why can any diet work? Because I think any diet creates weight loss, right? And so there are people out there that have succeeded long term on keto, on intermittent fasting, on carnivore. Could I do it? No, not a chance. I like eating whenever I want. I like carbs and I like not being a robot, right? But there are some people that succeed. And so that's why I think any diet can work because they all have to an extent, right? But we need to see people succeed long term and be healthy, right? You can't just starve your body for life. You need to do it in a healthy way. And that is where most diets fail because you're so restrictive that you're not giving your body, number one, the calories it needs to simply get you through the day, but number two, the vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients it needs to thrive. Past that, I think the next problem with diets or weight loss plans in general, trendy ones, is that when somebody jumps on it, they're borrowing these nutrition protocols. They're borrowing these temporary exercise programs. But the other thing they borrow is the identity of somebody that keeps weight off long term. They're borrowing the behaviors and actions of someone that keeps it off long term. But as soon as that diet stops, the nutrition goes away, the exercise goes away. And guess what else does? The thoughts, behaviors, and actions that came along with the identity that you borrowed. And so now all you're left with is your old identity. And that's the one that got you here in the first place. And so that's a big thing that we've been diving into is helping people realize they can write their own story again. They can change who they are in the best way possible. And number one, it's easier than most think. It's more fun and it creates a whole lot more change.
Brilliant. So, tell us a little bit about what that involves. I mean, where do we need to start?
We need to start by understanding what you said, Nikki. Calories aren't an enemy, right? Calories are an essential part of life. And 1,200 calories for nearly any adult person, unless you're absolutely tiny and completely sedentary, are not enough, right? And so for the most part, I'll see that the ladies we work with, so 40, 50, 60, they're eating anywhere from 1,800 to 2,400 calories a day. If we're above 2,000, oftentimes that's maintenance. But I mean, we can even lose at 1,800 calories a day, even more if somebody's active 4 to 5 days a week, right? And so, number one, you need to learn how much food your body needs to thrive rather than survive. We need to understand there's a right and wrong way to exercise if fat loss is your goal. And we need to understand there's a right and wrong amount of exercise if fat loss is your goal. I think those are some of the most foundational places to start, and then we can begin to dive into mindset and identity after that because that plays the role in long-term weight maintenance.
Right. Okay. So if we're looking at like getting enough calories, so we're getting our nutrients in, what kind of foods are we? I mean, there's obviously calories come in different forms. So what is your kind of approach in terms of that plate? What are we looking at and how often and all of that stuff?
I definitely like to prioritize protein because we understand that's one of the few things that's going to help us hang on to muscle as we lose weight. And again, this goes back to women in this age bracket just massively because you're already losing muscle naturally year after year. And so you need to try your hardest to combat that. Do everything you can. And so protein's big in the conversation. We want to prioritize that. Protein's also going to keep you more full for longer. And
Mm,
so that's helpful if you're losing weight because if you're hungry, you're more likely to have cravings or fall off. So increase your success chances. Um, but then after that, real foods, right?
mm,
And people think real foods has to be boring or expensive or hard to cook. And it's just not true, right? You can get away with all those. You can get rid of all those rather and still nail your diet. But one thing that I like to also add in here is that while I'm saying, look, you got to prioritize protein, your whole and real foods are very important. I actually don't want people to have that 100% of the time
mm,
because that's what's going to make you fall off as well, right?
Mm,
Sticking to this plan and thinking that if you fall off by 2% or 5% and you have an ice cream cone with your son or your daughter, that you failed. No, that
mm,
just means you're human. And I want you to be human. As soon as we give people permission to succeed only 80% of the time and maybe go off track the other 20%, guess what? Those cravings go away. They're happier, they're more present, and success just comes with ease.
yeah. I love that 80/20 rule, and I've been implementing it since the very beginning actually, because I found that I couldn't actually stick to being healthy 100% of the time. I like a drink of red wine, I like the odd bit of chocolate, and things that not necessarily too dark either. That kind of, you want that wiggle room to be able to just enjoy, and without any sort of guilt as well, because I've always felt guilty about eating the bad foods or the wrong thing, and that just leads to more stress, cortisol, more guilt around food, and then it starts controlling you, doesn't it? So I love that 80/20 rule. Tell me a little bit about your approach to carbohydrates, because this is a big topic in our world because of our increased vulnerability to insulin resistance and things like that. So tell us a little bit about your approach to kind of carbs, because midlife women are obsessed with carbs.
Yes, and sometimes obsessed with avoiding carbs.
Yeah.
And so, what I like to explain is that number one, we need carbs for multiple reasons. But if you're following my belief system around how to reach your goal, you're going to be in the gym and you're going to be doing some form of resistance training. Or
Mhm.
you know what? Let me change that. You're going to be exercising. Maybe
Yeah.
you're at home. Maybe you're in the gym. You're going to be doing some form of resistance training, and because of that, your muscles hold on to glucose inside of them. That's their energy. And when you exercise, you get rid of that. You deplete the glycogen stores in your muscles, meaning carb stores for simplicity. And so if you do that, if you deplete those stores, you need to refill them. And the only way to do that is by eating carbs and enjoying carbs. And so number one, that's going to fuel your workouts, allow you to push a little bit harder, which allows you to get more progress. But number two, I have so many women come to me, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and say, Joe, I'm doing everything right. But you know what makes it the hardest for me is I just can't sleep. I can't sleep at night. Like, okay, well, why don't you track your food for the next 3 days? Send me a log of what it was and I'll take a look. And most of the time, these ladies are either avoiding carbs entirely or almost always avoiding carbs after something like 5, 6, or 7 p.m. And
Mm.
so I'll tell them the scariest thing. And for anybody that can't sleep right now, do this, try this. And Nikki, I'm sure you may have mentioned it before, but have some complex, healthy carbs before bed and then get back to me and tell me how you feel. Tell me how you sleep. And 9 times out of 10, changes everything right off the bat.
Give us an example of what that could look like in our lives.
Yeah, sweet potatoes, oats, brown rice, just something that is going to be a little bit slower digesting, but is still a carbohydrate.
Banana with peanut butter, something like that.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good thing. So you said to pair it with a fat, right? You're having your carb, which is the
And a
banana,
bit of
and you're
protein.
pairing it with the peanut butter, which is the fat. It also has protein.
Yeah.
Because fat and protein digest slower, it forces the carb to digest slower. Yeah, that's a great thing.
So something like that will help to balance the blood sugar as well, so that you're not waking up at 3 in the morning with that blood sugar dip. But it's also going to help with the sleep too. So I love that. Love that tip. Let's get on to exercise. You said there are wrong and right types of exercise for us midlife women, and we've already mentioned resistance training. Tell us a little bit more about what we should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it helps to define this a little bit more, right? I don't want to say that overall across the board, there's a wrong and right type of exercise. But when we start talking about specific goals, there is, right? And so if somebody's goal is to lose fat, cardio is in fact the wrong type of exercise, right? Now, you can do cardio and you can watch the scale drop, but that doesn't mean you're losing fat. It means you're losing weight. And we understand you can lose water retention, you can lose muscle mass, and you can lose fat. We also understand the only thing that you care about losing is fat. But if you're doing cardio, chances are you're losing muscle, not fat, which means when you get to your goal weight, you are almost never at your ideal body composition, right? Two very big differences. And so I am a big proponent of strength training 2, 3, 4 days a week, definitely not 7. And we'll get into the frequency conversation in a second. But what happens when we strength train is you're telling your body, you're using your muscles. And by using your muscles, you're saying to your body, hey, look, we're using these things. We need to keep them. And if we're in a calorie deficit and we're losing weight, I know you're going to get rid of something on this body, but it can't be muscle. So it's got to be fat. And
Mhm.
so that's how, when you reach your goal weight, you also reach your ideal body composition and level of health.
Right. Okay. So resistance training, so cardio, if it makes you feel good, right? You can go for a run, and for some people mentally that's really de-stressing and they love it, and you're out in the air and fresh air and nature, whatever. So cardio is not bad, is it? It's just not great for fat loss, is what you're saying.
You nailed it.
Um,
Yeah.
so resistance training, so you can go to a gym. What else constitutes resistance training? Because some people just don't want to go to the gym.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find that a lot. So thankfully, we always have something with us that we can use for resistance training, and it's our body,
Yeah.
right? We have our body and we have gravity. And that's all you need, right? Especially if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of experience there, you're going to wake up sore just from using your body, right? So lunges, squats, push-ups, um, pull-ups from a doorknob and a towel, something simple like that. And then if that does get easy, right? If you start taking us up on this and you're doing resistance training with body weight and it becomes simple, the next step doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and start slamming weights around. You can order a set of bands on Amazon for 20 bucks. And now you have this new form of resistance you can take with you anywhere. You can take it to the office. You can take it in your bedroom if you don't even want your partner or your kids to see yet, and you can practice in there. And you can get away with a ton with bands, right? And so there's always this easy evolution that anybody can do.
Yeah, love that. And it doesn't have to be hard. It really doesn't. What about things like yoga and Pilates? What do you think about them for us women?
I think they're amazing. I mean, I think they're amazing across the board, right? The reason I like them is because if you're taking my advice on this, if you're doing resistance training, then your body's going to become tighter and you're going to lose mobility, you're going to lose flexibility. And yes, maybe the goal is to lose fat, fit into your clothes a little bit differently, but the goal is also to have a high quality life. And a piece of what that entails is being functional and being flexible and mobile. And so, my God, that's huge. I think there's also almost a meditative aspect to some yoga, which is great for mindset and just overall well-being.
Yeah, and there's also breath work that it features in both of those disciplines.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Pilates is really tough. Have you ever done a Pilates
I
class?
haven't. I actually never have.
Oh my God, you're using your body weight. I mean, that is resistance training for me. Obviously, it's slightly different than using weights, but if you're new, a Pilates class will do it for you, I'll tell you.
Well, I'll
Um,
tell you a story.
yeah, go on.
So I had a ex-partner probably 3 or 4 years ago, and we had traveled to Southeast Asia. She was really into yoga, and she's like, Joe, this is the perfect place to do yoga. Will you do it with me? So like, sure, sure, I'll do it. So we walked into this like beautiful hut that overlooked the ocean in the middle of the jungle. And if anybody's watching, like it's hard to tell because I have a sweatshirt, but I have a decent amount of muscle mass on my body. Like I'm a pretty strong guy. And there's there's Ashley, and then there's this group of other women that are just so much smaller than me. And I was like, oh yeah, I got this. I'm gonna do amazing. And the instructor starts and she's taking us through the flow. And she's like, all right, if you guys are advanced, you can do this pose. If you're beginner, you can do this one. And here's me with my stupid ego being like, you know what, I'm advanced. I can do the hard ones. I promise you, Nikki, I most certainly couldn't. And it absolutely kicked my butt. Yeah, it's definitely hard.
I've seen men like you in my classes. It's quite amusing,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yep. I definitely
Especially
laughed at myself a lot.
the flexibility ones as well. Yeah, you're hopeless. Anyway, I'm glad you tried it anyway. So tell us more about mindset. You've mentioned it already and how important it is. And you can pretty much forget everything if your mind isn't right. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, 100%. Um, Gosh, I don't even know where to start. What I've been talking about a lot lately with my clients, and I've touched on this too, is your identity. And what I tie to your identity is your thoughts, behaviors, actions. And who you who you say that you are, right? And so one practice that I bring with my clients is a little thing that I call little you versus big you. And so we'll spend probably 15 to 30 minutes together. In the very beginning, I will ask every client to write down everything that they have right now in their life, right? So inside their body, inside their relationship with themselves, inside their relationships with others, whether it's good or bad, write it down. A lot of times there's 50% positive, 50% negative, or sometimes the negative outweighs the positive. And then from that, I'll ask them to tie how they act to all of that. Like, okay, because you have all of this in your life, how are you acting and showing up? And they're shy, they're not setting boundaries, people are walking all over them, they don't speak up for themselves, they don't prioritize themselves, they take care of everybody else in life. Okay, great. We're done. You can leave that, set that aside for now. Now, what I want you to do is sit with yourself for 5 minutes and I'll put a timer on. I'll walk away from the camera and I'll say, now, what I want you to do is sit with yourself and imagine that there's a version of you in the future that already exists that has every single thing you want in your body, the way it feels, functions, its level of health, inside your relationship with yourself and how you see yourself, and inside your relationship with your kids, your partner, your parents, your friends, and family. Write all of that down. And so then they write down their absolute dream outcome. So then we're almost done. I say, okay, now imagine you have all of that. I snap my fingers, all of that's true. Now tell me how you act. Now tell me how you act because you have all those things. And so then they'll say, well, I'm setting boundaries. I'm speaking up for myself. I prioritize date nights every single week. I prioritize this set aside time for my kids every night. I'm asking for a raise at work. I'm doing all these things. I'm like, great, awesome. Here's where I pull the rug out from under you. You think because you have all these things in the future that this is how you're acting, right? Yeah, of course. That's what you just said, Joe. I'm like, wrong. You have all these things in the future because you started acting this way today. So if you want to reach your end goal, you need to embody this new person today. And that's what starts to drag them into all the results they've ever wanted. And it's crazy. I did this practice with my current clients on New Year's Eve of this year, last year rather. And my God, the ones that showed up to that call have exponentially grown so much faster than others. And it's just amazing to see them step into that version of themselves.
Mm. How much more work does that take other than writing it down? So what kind of practices can people start doing to kind of get into that new version of themselves? Is this a kind of meditative thing or visualization or how do you do it?
Yeah, so I have a couple other practices we'll tie into this and kind of evolve through that. But number one, that's a scary practice, right? Because to write it down is one thing,
Yeah,
but to start acting like that person is another, just
that's
like you
what I'm
said.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so on day one, after they've written that down and realized who they need to become, I do not expect them to go to their boss, ask for a raise, go to their husband, admit everything that's wrong and schedule a date night and then do all this stuff. All I expect them to do is pick one inside the whole list, chunk that down into five little subtopics and pick maybe one or two subtopics and take a baby step.
Yeah.
And then they were like, wow, I did it. And I actually already feel better. And it wasn't as hard as I thought. And so then the
Okay.
next day, maybe they just do that again. In the next week, maybe they add another one. And the more they do it, the easier it gets, the faster their growth comes. And before they know it, like they're knocking out half of this list every single day.
Mm. And it's a bit like changing your whole habits around health, isn't it? That you've got to sort of do it baby steps and
Yeah.
do and start to feel the rewards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Motivation. Love it. I love it. Joe, this has been so enlightening. Oh, I wanted to ask you about your diet detox because I know that's something that you do. So what is it?
Yeah, sure. So real quick, it is just two really trendy words that I stuck together to get people's attention, right? Diets and detox, things that a lot of women in this age bracket have fallen for or been hopeful about. But the way that I put them together is a little bit different. And so my goal is to detoxify the damage that diets have done, both on your body and mind,
Right.
and take that out of you, just like any other detox does in any other form. And so what I find is that a lot of times these women that are eating 1,200 calories, maybe 14, maybe 1,000 calories, they're eating that much and they're not losing weight. And so before we ever get into the weight loss conversation, we need to do something metabolically and help them build some muscle back so they're burning calories at rest and show their body that if they eat more, it doesn't need to just hold on to those calories, it can use them and expend them. And then they get the ability to lose weight back. Turns out they're usually eating more food than they were when they started and they're losing weight, which is great. And I have a whole protocol around that. So I wrote a book on it. It's completely free. And I also have a quiz because I had so many people coming to me for the free book. And I realized that sometimes they came to me for it thinking it was for them and they actually didn't need it. So I created a quiz. It takes 60 seconds. It's called Fix Your Fat Loss. And you can find out where you are, what your body needs, and I'll give you the next steps. So both those are free. I can send those to you and we can share them with the audience if you want.
Amazing. I'll put the links underneath. Yeah, that's all great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully listeners found this very helpful. I know I did. So thanks very much for coming.
Thank you, Nikki.